Hi everybody, Sean here at Go Big Bore or Go Home. Welcome back to another episode of First Friday Fives, and what we're discussing this time around is the top 5 most underrated big bore cartridges of all time. Big bore cartridges that probably deserve a second look, may not get the love they deserve, but are underneath it all simply fantastically designed. So, without further ado, let's talk about who deserves a little more credit in the big bore world. Coming in at number 5, and if you've been following the channel, you won't be surprised, is the 10mm. Now, the reason why I feel this is an underrated cartridge isn't because people don't know it's powerful. They do. And they also know it's got a reputation for recoil, which, okay, it kicks more than a 45 ACP, I get that. But realistically, when you look at the figures, it's not worse than a 41 Magnum, and I really don't think that the recoil is much worse than a 357 Magnum, if not about the same. I know a lot of people who will shoot the 357 or they'll shoot the 41, but the 10mm, no way. And I don't get that. I really don't. It's not that bad. I mean, it does kick, but it's not that bad. Furthermore, it's one of the most versatile handgun cartridges I've ever come across. I like to joke that to me, it's the 357 Magnum of the semi-auto world. It's got tons of power, it's got a wide range of velocities you can choose from, a wide range of bullet weights. I mean, even when you go heavy for caliber, you can go as light as, say, 135 grains, all the way up to 230 grains hard casting sometimes. I mean, this is an incredible cartridge. And with the power behind it, you can use it for hunting. I've seen people who are, handgun hunters that have gotten up close and personal with things like antelope and taken it down with a Colt Delta Elite with a stock 5-inch barrel and open sights. That's impressive. I mean, come on. 45s don't typically do that. 9mm don't do that. 40s typically don't do that either. But the 10mm does. And what's so cool about it is, for me, as a trail defense gun, you can load it up with hard cast, you can get a Glock 20, you've got 15 rounds of this. So if you encounter something like a mountain lion, you've got plenty of power to stop it. And while I'd want a little more power going up against something like a grizzly, against a black bear, you get a hard cast bullet, you're fine. I mean, this is a great cartridge. And if you're willing to, say, drop the power a little bit, because maybe you'd like a little less recoil, it helps there too. And it can be a very effective self-defense round. As a matter of fact, the only reason the FBI got rid of it is because there was a complaint about the recoil. Sorry, I don't get it. Although I will say, it was also a cartridge ahead of its time, because back in the day when it first came out, metallurgy wasn't what it is today, and it had a reputation for melting barrels. But when you're so badass you can melt barrels in a couple thousand rounds, you need to get more credit for what you are. Number 4 is a cartridge that I really do wish got more attention. It went out of production in handguns for a while, and thank the Lord it is back, and that's the 480 Ruger. I have to admit, this is one of those cartridges that I just look at and I'm like, okay, why didn't somebody think of this before? As everybody knows, when you want more power, you can either get more lead or you can get more gunpowder. And for folks wanting to step up from the 44 Magnum, the 454 Casull is a huge jump. But the 480 Ruger isn't as bad. The recoil, in my opinion, is kind of comparable in how it comes back, but the velocity is much reduced. The muzzle rise is much reduced. You don't have to deal with that really high pressure of the 454, and it's more comfortable to shoot. Now, don't let anybody fool you. It's still a lot to handle. It really is. But it's a great cartridge. You can fire bullets anywhere from, say, 275 grains on up to 425 grains. It's just amazing what you can do. And you don't have to push this cartridge too hard to get it to work. I know a lot of handgun hunters on forums who talk about using like a 400 grain bullet, a 410 grain bullet, about 1,000 feet per second, which doesn't kick that bad. I've loaded my 410 grainers around 1,200 feet per second, but they do it at 1,000 feet per second and have had no trouble taking whatever game they've aimed at. So it's really a great cartridge, and people just don't seem to give it the credit. It doesn't have the high pressure of the 454 Casull, it kicks less than the 475 line ball, and it's a considerable step up in power compared to the 44 Magnum. If you're a serious person about handgun hunting, this is a cartridge you absolutely should be paying attention to, because in a lot of ways, it really is a cartridge that it should be taking the world by storm when it comes to handgun hunting. And you'd be surprised if you talk to a lot of people who are serious about it, they do love this cartridge. Coming in at number 3 is a new favorite of mine, and one that's barely breaking out into the known world, and that is the 500 JRH. Jack Huntington nailed it on this cartridge. That's my honest opinion, because to me, this is what the 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum should have been. There really isn't a need most times to go to something like a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum or a 500 Maximum. There's not much that's in this ballistic category that won't get it done. This is a ballistic twin of the 500 Wyoming Express and also the 500 Line Ball. I mean, you get very similar results. And the thing that's great is because the 500 Smith & Wesson has become so prevalent, it's easy to find 500 Smith & Wesson brass that you can cut down. It's easy to find bullets in this caliber. It's so much more accessible for the reloader than a 500 Line Ball because the bullets are so much easier to get. So it really is a fantastic cartridge, and to me it's significantly better than the 500 Wyoming Express in accessibility. If you want a 500 Wyoming Express, there's nothing wrong with the cartridge. It's an excellent cartridge that does what it's supposed to do, but you're going to have to buy a Freedom Arms or get your gun converted. Both ways are going to be very expensive. The 500 JRH you can buy in a BFR, and having talked to Jack Huntington myself, you know, the BFRs are well built revolvers. You're really not going to have much that you could improve on with them. I don't want to say you can't, but you get a very solid gun for a much better price, chambered in this round right away. And because Magnum Research is pretty cool, they've actually even recessed the cylinder case head so that you can use a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum brass piece without turning the rim. So just chop it down, load it up, and away you go. It's a fantastic cartridge, and it has every bit of power you need to take whatever you want to hunt. I mean, if you want to go hunt hogs with this in the South, you can. If you want to go on a grizzly bear hunt, this will do it. If you want to go hunt an elephant, this gun will get it done. And yet, everybody knows the 500 Smith & Wesson, but not many people know about the 500 JRH. It's a real shame because it really is a fantastic hunting cartridge and a fantastic, dangerous game animal cartridge if you're needing a, woods defense, if you will. So hopefully it'll get picked up by a few more people. Hopefully Ruger, if you're listening, might chamber one of their guns stock in a 500 JRH. I would love it. I would love it. All right, moving on to number 2. This is a cartridge that is literally, it's the middle child of the Magnum Triumvirate, the 41 Magnum. This is a cartridge that can do so much and yet gets so little credit. And it's really a shame. Everybody wants the 44. Even I have to admit, I love my 44s. I have 2 of them. And they're great. I love that cartridge. You can do so much. But the 41 Magnum can do almost anything the 44 Magnum can do with almost the same power. I say almost because it's not quite. But with so much less recoil. And I was not a believer in this. I was not a convert until recently. I fired a 41 Magnum Black Hawk Bisley. And the recoil, when compared to a 44 Magnum, it was a sweetheart. I mean, it really didn't kick at all by comparison. Yet I can sit here and launch a 210 grain bullet at 1350, which is comparable to the 240 grain bullet at 1350 I was shooting out of my 44 Magnum, and with so much less recoil. The bullets are known to be excellent for their flat trajectory. They're known to be accurate. They're pleasant. And, if you're willing to reload, there's a wide range of what you can do. Of course, the downsides being that because not a lot of people know about it or care about it, it's sometimes hard to find a good, solid piece out there that isn't expensive. Although Ruger does make a good Black Hawk in a couple different barrel lengths in 41 Magnum, and they're very competitively priced. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in this cartridge, seriously, take a look at what Ruger's got, or if you're more of a Smith & Wesson fan, their Model 57s are tops. They're really cool guns. Check them out. Check out this cartridge. If you want big bore power without debilitating recoil, there is no reason to not look this cartridge up other than you're not willing to reload. If you're willing to reload, this is the cartridge for you, trust me. And coming in at number 1, hands down, without a question, the most underrated big bore handgun cartridge in the world is, drumroll please, the 45 Colt. That's right. I'm sorry. If you don't like the 45 Colt, I don't know why. And here's why. This is a cartridge that, like several cartridges today, when it was originally conceived, was during the era of black powder, when smokeless propellants didn't exist. So the cartridge really hadn't reached its potential. Now, we actually have so many more options when it comes to propellants, and we have guns that are strong enough now that can handle it. There's just almost no limit to what you can do with a .45 Colt. Most people don't know this, but John Linebaugh, before he invented his 500 and his 475, got started by building 5-shot cylinder .45 Colts, typically on the old Sevilles, and then later on the Ruger Blackhawks and Super Blackhawks. But that's where it started with him, was these 5-shot .45 Colts. He found if he beefed up the cylinder, there was almost nothing the gun couldn't handle and nothing the gun couldn't take down comfortably. I mean, realistically, you can load bullet weights anywhere from 200 up to 350 grains. I've personally done reloads of 250 grain bullets right around the 1280 feet per second mark. And shooting at steel at 300 yards, I'd usually get 2/3 of my shots on target. They were accurate, they hit hard, you could hear that nice loud ting. This cartridge really is amazing when it's loaded to modern day specs. Now the big forewarning I want to give everybody about this, it can only do that on guns that are built to take the abuse. So if you do this on a single action Army clone, you're going to blow up your gun. So please, please make sure your gun is rated to handle anything that's over spec on .45 Colt, because if you go with anything over the old black powder pressure levels and your gun isn't rated to handle it, you're going to damage your gun and maybe even yourself. So be very careful. Stick to your load specs and what those load data producers tell you it's for. I'm a Hornady manual guy, and in my Hornady manual, it tells me, it's like, these are for any .45 Colts, and you flip it over, Ruger and Thompson Contender only. Says it in there, and that's fine. That means if, I get a single action Army clone, can't use it on that because I don't want to hurt myself. But hands down, this cartridge can be used so many different ways for woods defense, for hunting. It's amazing. And if you load it right, you can use it basically like a .45 ACP powered revolver. So you can use it for self-defense. This gun, when loaded right, people have used to take big game, like moose, like grizzly. It can be done because it's got the power. And so that's the list, guys. If you agree, if you disagree, please tell me in the comments below. Remember, we're always about community here. We're always about, this is kind of, it's okay to discuss and disagree. I always ask we do it respectfully because remember, guys, this is just our opinion. We're not an authority here, but we do love to chat about big bores. Thanks so much for joining us again. And remember, go big bore or go home.